I remember primary school feeling strangely magical sometimes. Back then, the biggest worry you had was remembering your PE kit or hoping your mate got picked for your team at football. Everything just felt bigger when you were a kid. The classrooms, the playgrounds, even the silence in certain corridors. There are random things I still remember clearly now for no real reason. Sitting cross-legged in assembly, playing heads down, thumbs up, those massive parachute things in PE that everyone used to run underneath. Strange, really, what sticks with you. But there's one thing in primary school that stayed in my head more than anything else. And honestly, I don't really know what to make of it. The school I went to was old, and not an ancient castle old or anything dramatic. Just one of those old schools that always felt slightly frozen in time. Polished floors, creaking doors, old radiators that clanged during the winter. The PE hall especially felt strange when it was quiet. I must have been around 8 or 9 when this happened. So we were all sat in the hall waiting for PE to start. Everyone was messing about, just shouting over each other, kicking footballs about before the teachers told us to pack it in. Just normal stuff. And then suddenly, this scream echoed around the room. Not a shout, not someone messing about, a genuine scream. I remember the entire hall going silent almost instantly. Every kid stopped what they were doing and just looked around, confused, trying to figure out who it had come from. But the strange part was it didn't seem to come from any of us. I know that sounds dramatic looking back now, but that's genuinely how it felt. It sounded distant and close at the same time, like it had come from everywhere in the hall at once. What unsettled me the most, though, wasn't even the scream itself. It was the teachers. You expect adults to calm things down when you're a kid. Usually they'd laugh it off or explain it away somehow. But I remember the teachers looking genuinely uncomfortable. One of them immediately walked out of the hall to check the corridors while the others just tried to settle everyone down. And I remember thinking at the time that they looked scared as well. That's the part that stayed with me. That caught me off guard a bit. Looking back now, I'm sure there were rational explanations for most of it. Kids scare each other all the time. Memories become distorted over time. And old buildings always create strange atmospheres. But I still think about that scream sometimes. Not because I necessarily believe it was paranormal, but just because of how real it felt. And maybe even more than that, because of the look on the teachers' faces afterwards. That's the bit I've never really forgotten. So, fast forward to a few years ago, I met up with my mum in town for a drink and a catch up in Spoons, as you do. Nothing unusual really. We were just talking about work, life, how things were going with me and the missus, just normal conversation. But then somehow the subject of primary school came up, and almost without thinking, I mentioned what happened in the PE hall that day. I remember my mum looking at me immediately like she'd been dreading me bringing it up again someday. She sort of grimaced for a second before saying that both she and my brother had experienced strange things with the paranormal. Only unlike me, they'd claimed to have actually seen stuff. Now, my brother, who I'll call Jordan, he is 14 years older than me, but we both ended up in the same school just because it was a stone throws away, basically. One afternoon when he was a kid, he was outside playing footy in the playground, just like me, and, he was about to volley it up in the air when something caught his attention in one of the top windows of the school. At first, he thought it was just a teacher watching the playground, but when he looked properly, he realised something felt totally wrong. Standing at the window was a woman dressed like an old-fashioned nurse. According to Jordan, she looked like she stepped right out of the early 1900s. He said what unsettled him wasn't really how she looked, it was the feeling he got from her. He said she was just staring directly at him, just deking him out. Completely still, not blinking, not moving, just watching him. He looked away for a second and shouted over to his mates to look up at the window to see what he's just seen. But when they turned around, she was gone. Yeah, I know, pretty predictable stuff, but that's what happened apparently. So, apparently that feeling stayed with him for the rest of the day. That horrible sensation that someone was watching him constantly. My mum said he became really quiet afterwards. Apparently he kept looking around the classrooms and corridors like he expected to see someone standing there, which was unusual for him. I mean, he's always been pretty calm under pressure, and he still is now. I mean, he does work in the NHS in a surgical ward, and nothing really seems to faze him. So for him to react like that, even as a kid, it really stood out to people. There was also an assistant teacher at the school who I'll call Vera. She knew both me and Jordan during our time there. She's passed away now, but apparently she spoke to my mum about Jordan before he ever mentioned any of it himself. At first, she brought up how unsettled he seemed after seeing that woman in the window. But then eventually she admitted something else. She said she'd experienced strange things in the school herself. One story involved the basement area underneath the school. Now, during my time there, students would go down there fairly regularly to drop the recycling bags off from classrooms. They basically get you to volunteer to take the recycling from all the different classrooms in the school, and I used to volunteer all the time just to get out of class for a bit. Nothing actually happened to me down there, but it did always feel a bit uncomfortable, like your brain was convincing you to hurry back up the stairs. Apparently one afternoon, Vera was down there dropping some rubbish off when she suddenly felt something brush against her legs as she climbed the staircase. She said it felt almost like a cat running past her. At first, she thought maybe an animal had got in somehow, but when she turned the corner at the top of the stairs, she saw what looked like a dark figure just standing there at the corridor. A woman. Only there was something wrong with the way she moved. Vera said the figure just stood there staring at her for a second, before suddenly darting away down the corridor and slamming the door shut. She panicked immediately and ran up the stairs, convinced something was following directly behind her the whole time. According to my mum, she refuses to ever go down there again. What always stuck with me though was something Vera said to Jordan afterwards, after the whole woman incident in the window. She pulled him aside after school and asked if he was alright, because obviously he looked off the whole day. He just shrugged, and then she asked him quietly, "You saw something, didn't you?" And apparently he nodded and just said, "Yeah, a woman in the window." And Vera replied, "Right, do me a favour, Jordan. Don't tell your mum. Leave that to me, alright, love?" When my mum told me all these years later, she asked not to bring it up with Jordan myself because he still doesn't like talking about it, and obviously I understand why. Mum then shifted the perspective to our own house, which I was pretty surprised came under the same breath of conversation. My mum put the deposit down on our house about 35 years ago now. Back then she was actually with someone before my dad, which is Jordan's dad. I'll call him Steve. Technically Jordan's my half brother, but I've never liked calling him that. We grew up together for 11 years before he moved out, so he's always been my brother. Before moving into the house, my mum and Steve had been living in this tiny flat on a rough estate, and according to both of them, strange things used to happen there from time to time. Nothing full on horror film level, just little things that slowly got under your skin. They'd smell burnt toast, nothing was cooking. Sometimes they'd hear whispers in empty rooms, and both of them described this constant feeling that someone was watching them. Not enough to completely terrify them, but definitely enough to make you feel uneasy in your own home. So when they finally moved into the new house, they were relieved more than anything. Over the next few months, they started filling the place with all sorts of random stuff, mainly because my mum was bringing loads of stuff back from car boot sales and charity shops. Apparently it wasn't anything special, just another object sitting around the house amongst loads of other bits and bobs. Eventually they decided they didn't really need it because there were already a load of mirrors everywhere, so they just threw it out. And according to my mum, That's when things got a lot worse. One summer afternoon, when she was home alone doing jobs around the house, taking the bins out, hanging washing on the line, constantly going in and out through the back door, she'd just come back inside to grab more washing when she noticed something strange in the mirror in the living room. An old woman. At first, just briefly in the corner of her eye she could see her, but clear enough to stop her dead in her tracks. The first thing she did was check the doors. Obviously back then people would leave the front doors open during the day because it was safe back then, wasn't it? But the only door that was actually open was the back door. The front door was locked. It was boiling outside, and she'd been rushing around all day doing jobs, so she just tried to ignore it and just drummed it up to her being a bit tired. But when she came back in the room again, the woman was still there. Only this time she was closer, standing directly against the mirror. My mum said the face looked gone and hollow, completely drained of life, like she'd been staring at something dead. But at the same time, the entire room just felt freezing cold. Middle of summer and it felt like it were winter. What's strange is my mum didn't even scream or panic straight away. She just slowly backed out of the room, went outside again, trying to finish the hanging up and washing, and convinced herself she'd not really seen anything. Steve just came back from work, and my mum said that's the moment she properly panicked, because she realised he'd seen it as well. The two of them went back in the living room together, and there was nothing there. The room felt completely normal again, warm, like nothing happened. But after that, more strange things started happening around the house. The whispers came back, the uneasy atmosphere, the horrible feeling of being watched. And eventually they just started to wonder if what they'd experienced in the flat, maybe it hadn't stayed there at all. Maybe that this thing or presence might have followed them. Eventually they somehow narrowed it down to that old hand mirror they'd thrown away. To this day I have no idea how they came to that conclusion. Maybe intuition or coincidence. So they went outside and took the mirror back out the bin. After that, they placed it in a small black box and stored it away somewhere in the house. And according to my mum, nothing's actually happened since. No whispers, no figures, no weird happenings, no strange atmosphere. The house has felt completely normal ever since. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever noticed anything in the house that's paranormal. So, yeah. Thankfully, my mum insists it's somewhere no one will actually find it. Looking back on all these stories now, I think what unsettles me the most isn't necessarily whether any of it was paranormal or not. It's how ordinary it all felt. None of these things happen in abandoned castles or creepy forests. They happened in normal houses, normal schools, and maybe that's why they stay with people. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed hearing these stories from 3 different generations of my family as well as myself. I know they're probably not the scariest ghost stories you've ever heard, but I wanted to share stories that actually meant something to me personally, rather than just reading someone else's online Reddit story. And honestly, I'd like to share more stories, reflections, memories, maybe even just like random topics in the future while I'm doing drawings like this. And this is like a drawing of Assassin's Creed Black Flag. I'm really looking forward to the new remake that's coming out soon. It's like it's in June, isn't it? So yeah, that'll be wicked, that'll be sick. But until then, in a bit.